You may not have heard of Australopiths before, but I bet you've heard about Lucy. Now we're going to talk about some of the most well-known species in human evolution. Now we're going to talk about Australopiths. We have a couple different species, including this lovely Mrs. Plus to talk about. Our goals for this lecture, first we're going to talk about what they are in general, and then there are two genera we want to discuss. First, genus Australopithecus, and second, genus Paranthropus. But first, let's get situated. What are Australopiths in the first place? Let's go back to our timeline of human evolution. Now we're talking about this time period, kind of right in the middle. This particular graph labels all of them as genus Australopithecus, but for right now, let's just call them Australopiths. So Australopiths, we're pretty sure that these guys are descended from early hominins, somehow. Exactly how they're descended, that is up for debate. Are they directly descended from Ardipithecus? Or did we skip Ardipithecus and are they descended from Auroran? We're not entirely sure what's going on. But in general, we somehow get Australopiths from our early hominins. And after Australopiths, we do know we get genus Homo out of them. Exactly from which species? That's hotly debated. Some other things like these guys, they're fully bipedal. That's just not under debate at all. Everybody agrees on that. But even though they are fully bipedal, we do still see ape-like body proportions. So basically think a chimpanzee, but walking around on two legs. That's the overall picture of how they look like. Of course, there's some other differences, but that's what we're going to talk about. They do also have big teeth. If you take any Australopith and compare it to a modern human, their molars, the teeth all the way in the back, much larger than ours. We also see a fair amount of sexual dimorphism. So we see differences in body size between males and females. If you need to, go back and rewatch some of these sexual selection topics from way back at the beginning of evolution. Another thing we're going to see here is something called Mosaic Evolution. We already saw it a little bit with our early hominins, but we're going to see this theme again and again throughout hominin evolution. This is the idea that there are different rates of evolutionary change among different types of features or traits. So we're going to see changes in the legs happening at one rate, but changes in the brain and the face happening at another. We're not going to expect everything to change at once, and we're going to see different pieces of the evolutionary puzzle happen at different times. This is part of what makes it difficult to figure out exactly who is more closely related to whom because we have different types of traits happening in different groups. And this is one of the reasons why it's both interesting and confusing. But if we are going to talk about human evolution, it is helpful to talk about some of the important people who discovered all of these, namely the Leakeys discovered I don't know, half of all the fossils that we're going to talk about. It started with Lewis and Mary. They had a son, Richard, who married Maeve, and they had a daughter, Louise. So we have 3 generations here of people who are just finding fossils. It is more than just luck because there's certainly a science to fossil hunting. First, we know in general where human evolution happens. So if you want to be searching for these fossils, you are either looking in East Africa or South Africa. But you're also looking for, rocks of a certain age. You're looking around well-known sites to see if there's anything more to discover there. So if you have all of these connections, you're probably going to be finding more fossils. Australopiths, of course, it was named in 1925 by Raymond Dart. Australopithecus means southern ape because he found the first one in South Africa. We do also, of course, see many different Australopithecus in East Africa. So Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, all up there. And we also have a few guys here in Chad. It's a little weird, but evolution is a little bit confusing. We do then see genus Paranthropus, named by Robert Broom in 1938. And we do have one other genus here, Kenyanthropus. It was named pretty recently in 2001. We'll talk about that one later. But let's zoom in here into our map. So remember that Africa is really, really big. So even though on this map, Chad may not look too far from Ethiopia, that is about 1,000 miles. So Some people want to argue that the species that pop up in chat are actually different species than the ones in East Africa, even though they are morphologically very similar. Other people want to say that the species just had a really big range, and that is one of the debates happening right now. And also remember, there's a even larger distance between East and South Africa. So that's one of the reasons we do tend to see different lineages happening in East Africa and South Africa. But let's talk about some of our species here. We have two main groups of Australopiths. We have genus Australopithecus and then genus Paranthropus. So let's talk about some of their differences. So again, we have Australopithecus and Paranthropus. In general, Australopithecus tends to be gracile, and Paranthropus is very robust. Australopithecus has, fairly large teeth, but they're moderately large. Paranthropus, on the other hand, those are some big honkin' chompers. Very, very large teeth. Australopithecus is a little bit older. The earliest is about 4.2 to million years ago, to about 2 million years ago. Paranthropus is slightly younger, so 2.7 to 1.2 million years ago. Paranthropus is very likely descended from Australopithecus, though exactly which species are, of course, debated. Australopithecus has, 400 to 500 cubic centimeters in their brain. Paranthropus is about 520. I would say really they're about the same size. We have more specimens for Australopithecus, so that's why we have a range here. If we have more fossils for Paranthropus, then we would have a better idea of what that actual estimate would be. Australopithecus has a very prognathic face. Paranthropus has a wide face. So there's a little bit of difference in their facial structure going on. We also see a difference in where they live. So Australopithecus is more woodlands, dry, they're a little bit open, but it's a little bit more wooded. And Paranthropus is definitely on the grassland. So think of C3 plants is where we find Australopithecus, but C4 plants, that's where we find Paranthropus. So, can you explain what are Australopiths and what are the general characteristics of each genus?